He was Europe's unstoppable storm, a man who crowned himself emperor. But on this day, June 18, 1815, Napoleon Bonaparte faced his final gamble. Under a brooding gray sky with dark clouds gathering over muddy fields, the drums of the French army echoed across the dawn. Napoleon stood there, hand over his heart, his eyes cold, calculating, as he prepared to risk everything he had built. This wasn't just a battle. It was the climax of an era, a showdown that would decide the fate of a continent. His return from exile had stunned the world, but now he had to prove he was still the master of war. The stage was set near a small Belgian village called Waterloo, but the weather had turned against the emperor. Relentless rain had turned the fields into a swamp, a quagmire of mud that would bog down his cannons and cavalry. Napoleon made a fateful decision. He would wait for the ground to dry. It was a costly mistake. Every minute that ticked by was a minute gained for his enemies. On a nearby ridge, the Duke of Wellington's troops were digging in, their cannons aimed, the rain pelting down as they fortified their positions. The ground, churned under countless boots and hooves, became a defensive advantage. With each passing hour, the British and their allies grew stronger, their resolve hardening like steel. The calm before the storm was a tense, agonizing wait, with the fate of Europe hanging in the balance. When the cannons finally roared, France unleashed its fury. The ground trembled as 70,000 men surged forward, a tidal wave of blue uniforms against the green and red of the Allied lines. The thunder of hooves, the scream of steel, the deafening roar of artillery. It was the sound of an empire fighting for its life. French flags rose defiantly through the thick clouds of cannon smoke. Cavalry charged with sabers flashing, their legendary courage on full display. It was a spectacle of terrifying grandeur, the full might of Napoleon's war machine thrown into one desperate, all-or-nothing assault. For a moment, it seemed as if nothing could stand in their way, that the emperor's genius would once again prevail. But Arthur Wellesley, the Duke of Wellington, stood his ground. Mounted on his horse, he was a picture of calm amidst the escalating chaos. He had chosen this battlefield carefully, and he trusted his men to hold it. His redcoats formed their infamous iron squares, bristling walls of bayonets that broke charge after charge of French cavalry. The smoke and mud covered everything, turning the battlefield into a vision of hell. But Wellington's lines held firm. Napoleon's finest, the cream of his army, threw themselves against this unyielding wall of British resolve, but they could not break the line. The Duke's quiet defiance was the anchor against the French storm. Then, a sound that Napoleon had been dreading all day echoed from the east, the distinct roll of Prussian drums. Out of the tree line, just as the sun began to dip towards the horizon, emerged columns of soldiers in black uniforms. They were the reinforcements Napoleon had hoped to defeat separately, but now they were here. General von Blücher had kept his promise to Wellington. The trap was closing. Panic began to ripple through the French ranks. Soldiers who had fought with unwavering bravery just hours before now saw themselves caught between two armies. The tide of the battle had turned, swiftly and irrevocably. By nightfall, the dream of an empire burned in the rain-soaked fields. Napoleon watched in disbelief as his army, once the most feared in the world, broke and fled. The battlefield was a horrifying tapestry of mud, smoke, and fire. Over 40,000 men lay dead or wounded, a testament to the brutal cost of ambition. As the sun finally set behind the ruins of his grand army, Napoleon's final gamble had failed. The Grande Armée was shattered, and with it, the Napoleonic legend. The silence that fell was heavier than any cannon blast, filled only with the ghosts of victory. He would never return. Stripped of his titles and his power, the man who once ruled Europe was now a prisoner, placed on a ship bound for the remote island of St. Helena in the middle of the Atlantic. The vast ocean waves that crashed against the hull were the walls of his new prison. As his reflection faded into the darkness of his cabin, he was left to face the ghosts of his own glory, a lonely exile haunted by what could have been. The faint echoing cry of "Vive l'Empereur" was now just a whisper lost to the wind. Napoleon conquered nations. He rewrote laws, redrew maps, and reshaped the very course of history. His legacy is one of military genius and boundless ambition. But in the end, on a muddy field in Belgium, it was the Battle of Waterloo that conquered him. Thank you so much for watching this journey into one of history's most pivotal battles. If you want to see more stories of the conflicts that shaped our world, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join us for the next one. We'll see you then.